First and 15. Aikman, who has completed 10 straight, makes it 11. The catch is made by Novacek, who's inside the 20 and wrestled out.
Hi, I'm Jay Novacek, the world champion Dallas Cowboys. Although most people know me for my accomplishments on the football field, I'm even more proud of what I do off the field as a different kind of cowboy. I raise cattle on our family ranch in Nebraska. As a Dallas Cowboy, I know the value of teamwork and of working to be the best we can be today, while building for the future. The team is very much like a family, but a family is just as important to my job as a Nebraska Cowboy. The cattle business is very much a family business. More than 97% of all cattlemen are family farmers and ranchers. In addition, 4 out of 5 cattle families intend to pass their business on to the next generation. Taking good care of the land is the basis of a cattleman's livelihood, not just for today, but for future generations who will carry the tradition of America's cattlemen. Ralph Neal is a rancher and a pilot. He's flown over the Iowa Corn Belt for 30 years, and sometimes he wishes he could fly back in time.
One of the things that I would just give absolutely anything to be able to do would be to roll the clock back 150 years and fly over this farm in an airplane at about 1,000-foot altitude to see what it was like 150 years ago. In this part of the state of Iowa, there's a road every square mile. So we've got a ditch on each side of the road every square mile that's flowing in a direction that was not common when the Indians were here 150 years ago and more. We have to have water retention structures below it to hold that water because the water flows more heavily than what it would be if it were doing it naturally.
On their Douglas Center stock farm in Corning, Iowa, the Neal family understands the importance of conserving water. A decade ago, with the help of the Soil Conservation Service, the Neals built a network of water retention ponds and terraces. The terraces collect water on the hillsides. Then, the water flows naturally into ponds and streams for cattle, reducing the need for pumps. This saves energy and controls erosion.
From a conservation standpoint, these stock ponds hold all the water that flows down to that point. From that point on, there are intakes in those water retention structures that take the water out below the top of the ground to a natural waterway below them, so that it can't cause any more erosion. The erosion stops at that point. It is totally controlled there.
The Neal family's commitment to the environment is strong, perhaps because their family roots are so deep.
Well, I was born here. The quarter section of land where we happen to be sitting right here has been in the Neal family since 1875. My father was born here, and my grandfather came here when he was just a year of age.
Ralph and Joyce Neal understand they don't have the right to do anything they want with the land. Instead, they believe they have a serious responsibility to improve the land because they're only here for a short time.
As land has become available near to us, we have tried to expand our operation by adding additional acres. Although we have purchased this land, it really is here for future generations. We are only tenants on God's earth.
In Iowa, the problem sometimes can be too much water. That's never been the case for Roger Bowe in New Mexico.
We're what we call a semi-arid climate. We're what I call a brittle climate that takes a little bit different management from, let's say, farms back east or where the rainfall is a lot higher. We have to depend on the cattle and other wildlife to help the range increase, to help the different grasses become healthy. We use the cattle as more of a tool to help manage our ecosystem than anything.
Roger Bowe calls this the power of the hoof. As the cattle move from pasture to pasture, they till the soil, breaking up the arid dirt and keeping the soil healthy for future generations.
This land has been in the same family since 1911. We want to make sure it stays in the same family from generation after generation. In order to do that, we have to keep the land as productive as possible. We have to keep everything in balance as much as possible, keep it as diverse as much as possible, and it's something that we all ranchers, I think, that are family owned look forward to, is passing it on to our kids.
To make sure he can pass his land on to his children, Roger Bowe has made water conservation and management a priority. As a result, water tables on his Rafter F Ranch have risen substantially. In 1950, this well was dry. Now the water level is measured at 7 feet. New springs are appearing on the ranch where water has never flowed before. And there are other improvements too.
We used to have 5 different pastures on this ranch, and we'd put 1 herd in each pasture, more or less. And then back in 1984, we started subdividing it all, and now we have 54 different paddocks that we run in. What we've seen is the ground cover increase, some places up to 50%. We've seen some of our better species of grass come back to the point to where they're flourishing.
All of this happened in an area where just a decade ago, 2/3 of the land was bare. It all supports one of Roger Bowe's guiding principles, that families who make a living off the land have the strongest commitment to improve the land.
I like the lifestyle of being my own boss, making my own mistakes, learning from my own mistakes. And it's just a great lifestyle to bring my kids up in. They learn responsibility, they learn self-discipline, and some of the values that I really, truly cherish, these are the values, this is what I can give my kids, and that's something I'm able to do here.
You're going to put your hammer, you're going to stretch it behind the bob, and you're going to put the hammer behind the pole. Stretch it.
Children are also an important part of E.J. Whitmire's life. On his Ridgefield farm in North Carolina, he reaches out to children. He makes them active participants in ranching and in environmental stewardship. Working with young people is a tradition that dates back to 1955, when E.J. brought his first 192 acres. He wanted a farm. What he found was a garbage dump.
Well, yes, I bought this tract of land that was up for sale and had been up for sale for some time, and people were not interested in it because it was used for a community dump for 30 years. There was car bodies, there was old refrigerators, there was fruit jars. It's just accumulation of material. And I looked at that piece of land and looked at Poorhouse Mountain and looked at the beautiful streams and decided that if anything could be pitched down, it could be picked up. And I had a general idea who was pitching it down. So I went straight to those families and I said, I'd like to hire you, talking to the mothers usually, I'd like to hire you and your children Saturday to help me do some work. And the mama would show up with 3 or 4 children, or a 4-H club group would show up. When I bought this tract of land, I didn't put up no trespassing signs. I didn't say, don't you dump anything. I just hired the same people that was dumping it. And you didn't have to, after a while. They caught on, and they began to look, and I made believers out of them that way. And that's the way I cleaned up this place.
Today, the work on the Ridgefield farm is still done by younger people, high school and college students. Whitmire calls them EJ's kids. Younger children visit the ranch to learn about the cattle business and conservation. Ridgefield is well known for its forestry and wildlife practices. The farm is divided in half, 500 acres of pasture and 500 acres of woodland for wildlife habitat. You'll find pheasants and guinea, quail and deer, foxes and red-tailed hawks.
Well, we put a great deal of value on keeping nature pretty well in balance. And when you don't have birds and animals or don't have fish in your streams, you need to think a little bit what you've done. The cattle ranchers and the cattle farmers are in a better position than any other people to provide for a habitat for wildlife. And it doesn't take much but we have to give that part of the system a little bit of planning and thinking.
Everything that happens on the Ridgefield farm is shaped by the words on an old scrap of paper found by E.J. Whitmire in a trash pile nearly 4 decades ago. These words became his environmental creed.
This land belongs to my people. Some of them are living, some of them are dead. Most of them are yet to be born. Therefore, I must take good care of the land.
A lot of today's ranches had humble beginnings. E.J. Whitmire started his on a garbage dump. In Tribune, Kansas, A.E. Smith started his ranch with just one heifer, a heifer that couldn't walk. Today, the Smith Cattle Company has grown into a multi-state operation with ranches in Colorado and Montana, and farming and feedlot operations in Kansas. But it's still a family operation.
All 11 families in the Smith family work together to work on the strategic alliance to produce beef, produce cattle. Our family started back on living off this land back in 1885, and we're still doing it. And a lot of our production standards and our wildlife goals and stewardship goals are aimed towards the future and providing a future for future generations of our family to live off the land.
Improving the land for tomorrow means using the newest technology today. An irrigation process called low-energy precision application has cut water usage on the farm by 20%.
Okay, what we're doing is lowering the pressure we're pumping of the water from 50 pounds to 80 pounds and bring it down closer to the crop. We have less evaporation, less wind drift, and we have like a 15 to 20% more efficiency in our water use.
Precision watering is one way to control erosion. Another way is to reduce tillage. Ab Smith built this unique no-till drill. Following behind the combine, this machine drills the seed through the corn stubble right into the ground. The result? You use less water and reduce erosion.
It's just several components of different manufacturers put together to make up the drill, and it's been trouble-free. It'll drill just about through anything. We haven't had any problems with it. It'll cut through 180 bushel corn stubble and drill the wheat in about a ½ inch deep, then we'll come in and we'll water it up with the sprinkler. Of course, you have the benefits of the corn stubble stopping the snow, which helps the wheat out considerably.
Environmental stewardship is just as important at the Smith family feedlots. Manure is composted and sold in bulk to farmers or in bags to retailers.
We built this feedlot with the idea in mind of not only meeting the state specs but exceeding them, and we utilize that by the ponds that we built. And we've also got an underground water system that helps us take this water out and irrigate corn and wheat with it.
Along with crops, the Smith family plants trees, thousands of them, to protect the wildlife. The deer and the antelope herds are flourishing.
The shelter belt not only benefits wildlife, but also helps benefits our facilities, benefits cattle. One of the goals of our family is also to benefit our environment. Our family believes that environmental stewardship, along with our conservation farming, are tools that will take care of our land and keep us living and working on the land for many years to come.
Preserving the land for future generations is also a priority for John Hyde on the Hyde family's Yamsey Ranch near Chiloquin, Oregon.
This plant has a little bit of a dead center. It's starting to come back a little bit. We'll take a look at the roots here. So there's a lot of most of the plant itself is in the root systems underneath the ground. And that's kind of what we look at for the health of the plant.
When Buck Williams started his ranch in 1911, he borrowed the name from the Kalamath Indians. Yamsey means home of the north wind. Today, Yamsey is home to Buck's nephew, Dayton Hyde, his wife Gerda, and their son John, all depend on Yamsey for their livelihood.
We try to manage the ranch in the surrounding areas, try to manage for the whole ecosystem. So I can live here, and my kids can live here, and their kids can live there after that.
The Hyde family is dependent on nature, and nature depends on the family. The system works. Beef tonnage has doubled over the past 20 years, and wildlife and nature are prospering. Nature is a cherished part of the Yamsey environment. Gerda and John planted more than 240,000 trees by hand to provide cover for wildlife. The family restored 5 miles of trout stream and even built a 300-acre lake.
It was an unusual idea, but it was a great idea now to build a lake there. And we bought some old equipment and built a lake strictly for recreation and waterfowl and wildlife use. It's the only water in that area.
The Hyde family and nature have a very special partnership, one that will continue for generations to come. The same kind of environmental farm partnership is apparent on Jan Vosberg's farm in southwest Michigan.
We are environmentalist farmers. We're doing things to help the environment. I think it's been said, and I believe it, farmers, the original environmentalists, really, because all your operations and all the things you do really depend upon the environment.
Jan Vosberg started his beef feedlot and crop farm 37 years ago on 170 acres. Today, Vosberg Farms feeds over 1,000 head of cattle annually. In keeping with the family tradition, Jan's sons, Timothy and Gregory, are part of the operation, and they share their father's environmental concerns. For instance, why send cereal byproducts to the landfill when you can feed them to cattle? And why use large amounts of herbicides and pesticides when crop rotation can help control insects and weeds?
We do crop rotation on most of the ground. What we do is we run a year or 2 years of corn and then go to soybeans and then to wheat. Corn does not host the same insects that soybean does or wheat does, so you break up insect infestations. And the same thing is true of weeds too. You have a different window for the weeds to come in, so you can control some of the things that give us problems out there by using rotations.
Crop rotation helps control erosion, as does careful watering. A special irrigation plan, accounting for soil types, evaporation, and rainfall, conserves water and eliminates runoff.
How much moisture there is in soil.
Jan Vosberg also developed an energy-efficient system to water his cattle. These tanks refill only when cattle drink the water. This saves water and energy, eliminating the need for heating elements during the cold Michigan winters.
Our watering systems, all the new updated ones we put in are what we call energy-free. That is, from the standpoint we don't have to run an electric line to it and buy electricity to keep them from freezing. It's enhancing environment from the standpoint we're not using energy, but at the same time it's reducing cost to us. So I guess that's another example of doing things for the environment that can be economically beneficial to ourselves.
Our last stop is in Arkansas, home of Noakes Farms. You might say, when it comes to soil and water conservation, that Lynn Noakes wrote the book. In fact, the district conservationist in Benton County, Arkansas, said many of the procedures now outlined in conservation guides could have been written from practices implemented on Noakes Farms. At one time, every possible acre on this farm was clear tillage. Now, every acre on the farm is in cover, eliminating soil erosion and conserving water.
Several years ago in our area, it was the practice to clean everything off, clean all the wooded areas off, mow the fence rows, take the weed hook, cut out from under the fence row and that sort of thing. We have determined for about the last 10 years or so that that we would take a little different approach. We're trying to reestablish trees, encourage trees in areas that are rough and a little more, the slope's a little steeper. We're not cleaning fence rows like we used to. We're leaving some areas. It was really a matter of changing our thinking from everything looking like a closely clipped lawn to enjoying the beauty of a more natural setting. And it was a little hard at first, frankly, but the rewards are there.
Changing attitudes about the land was only part of the equation. Water was the other. Uncontrolled runoff had to be addressed.
We built containment structures, for instance, on the place to control the flow of water off of the property. And that gives us a source of water for our livestock on the one hand, but it also prevents any kind of washing away of soils or nutrients that would get onto neighbors' property and streams. It gives us control over what leaves the property. We are on the high ground and water drains off of us into different basins.
Concern for your neighbors and concern for the environment. That's how most ranchers do business today. Over 80% are now using rotational grazing. Nearly half are using natural pest control systems as an alternative to chemicals. Nearly 90% of the ranchers had developed areas to support wildlife. Over 60% provide feed for wildlife during the winter. And nearly 2/3 have built terraces, ponds, or other water containment systems. The farmers and ranchers you've just met are America's real cowboys. They're planting seeds of knowledge with their children and grandchildren, helping them to learn how to conserve our fragile environment. Look around. What do you see? Trees, water, earth? What you're really seeing is the future. Your future, my future, our future as a country. When it comes to environment, there's no them or us. It's everybody working together. We're all one big family.
We're leaving some areas and actually doing some plantings to feed certain birds, for instance, during the season when they need some additional care. Those kinds of things have been encouraging wildlife, and we're seeing a resurgence of some of our smaller animals. We see a wide variety of songbirds. The butterfly population and those sorts of things are really returning. We see a lot of wildflowers now along our fence rows and areas that we didn't used to see.
Being a rancher, being involved with nature, you can't help but care for what you produce on. You can't help but feel bad when you see a creek eroding. You can't help feel bad whenever you see something bad in the environment going on. It just hurts you. It's not altogether just a profit thing. It's the feeling I get whenever I see a creek bed healing up, or a stock tank clear, or a stream running clear, or springs coming up. That's a good feeling.
Farmer and ranches all over the country are very interested in the environment. They have to do things that protect our natural resources, protect our environment, so that they can continue to operate a very viable business. If we don't do things that could protect our environment, we won't have an environment that's going to take care of us.